Welcome back, listeners. We have another episode of She Said, because I'm the boss, and He Said, because he's got an opinion that he likes to share. I hope that you will enjoy today's opinion. We are talking about disconnect because we see a fair bit of it. And sadly, I've seen some pretty catastrophic results of disconnect in couples that are in business recently. Some tradie friends have several of them actually through disconnect and misunderstanding and then a misalignment of what they're working towards have unfortunately found themselves in relationships that no longer exist or have changed dramatically. So they're not in a romantic relationship anymore. And so we wanted to take an opportunity today to maybe throw on the table one of those things we hear pretty frequently as business coaches in the trade space. And that is, yeah, well, if he just did this, we could get closer to that. And then we hear the fella say something like, I just want to be on the tools, just like what I'm doing. I just enjoy my job. I don't want to be a big business. I don't want to employ more people. And there becomes this fracture point, I suppose, within the relationship and what people are working towards. And unfortunately, the strongest personality tends to win out in those situations. And the business is going to go in whatever direction it goes that supports the agenda of the strongest person. And we wanted to, in our usual ridiculous way, remind you of some opportunities that you have available to you. Hello, Warwick.
Hello, Nicole. Hello, listeners.
Stay so quiet all the way through that.
I was just thinking about all the work I have to do, Nick. I was waiting for you to stop talking
This
so I
sounds
can just
really
get on with it. Funnily enough, it's not that hard to role play.
No, it's not. It feels like something that we see every day. Maybe we might even live in it a bit sometimes. Anyway, the point is,
This could be interesting for you, Coxie.
no, it's fine. I don't know. If I had $1 for every time we had a couple in front of us with misaligned ideals of where a business goes or whose role or who does what or whatever that looks like, I'd be really wealthy.
Mm.
It's a paradigm, I think. I think it comes from a space of misunderstanding, a lack of clarity, and somebody's enthusiasm. There's always somebody in the partnership that's really enthusiastic about the opportunities available. And there's not always and often someone who just wants the results that they're currently getting.
Yeah. Obviously, we don't have the answer to every scenario because there's so many nuances with every couple and how they interact, different personalities, different beliefs, different backgrounds, different experiences in life. It all contributes to some of these disconnects that you've highlighted, Nick, between the husband and the wife, or the tradie and the tradie support person. Sometimes it could be the other way around. Could be the chicks on the tools and the dudes in the office doing the Mr. Mum thing, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, it's a difference of opinion, or I think it's actually more of a different perspective, and not necessarily realizing sometimes that they can both work towards a common goal, just in different ways. And I think one of the most common archetypes or scenarios is where hubby just wants to put up houses or lay pipes or tiles or whatever. He just wants to do the thing that he knows, that he's comfortable with. I find a lot of guys lack confidence outside of what they know. And again, this is just based on our view of the people we work with. So it's observational, not sort of science tested or anything. I think a lot of the women have a more diverse range of experience and perspective, the wives, because a lot of them have been in the workforce, they're mums, they're involved with school, they're involved with other sporting activities, they're running the house, they're doing the bookwork, like they're bloody amazing, to be honest, which is interesting coming off the back of the last episode I did with you. So maybe we should encourage people to listen to that one to listen to this one as well. Waz is not really that bad. But I think they just have a breadth of perspective that the tradie husband, doesn't yet have, could have if he chose to, if he was willing to, broaden the view a little bit. And so they're like, well, it doesn't have to be this way, or I don't want you working 70 hours a week and missing out on all the kids' stuff. And I think a lot of the time, Nick, and I'm sure you talk about this a lot on the podcast here, the ladies can see how much it affects their men, and they'd like it to be different for them,
Mm.
because that's what we do when we're in a relationship. We want the best for the other person.
I think there's quite a few issues at play here. One of them is generally, until we know better, the only thing in our wheelhouse to drive a
Mm.
better income is for our tradies to work harder. And so we tend to see them get stuck in that cycle of just working harder. But during that moment, they're letting us and the family down because they're not home. They're not around for significant events. They've got none of the freedom that they spoke about when they first went into business. The other thing that I was thinking about as you spoke through then is you're absolutely right. Most ladies don't grow up and go working straight away into a trade business. And so they have outside experience, particularly with their work. And as we say here all the time, those skills are really transferable. So are the goals and the dreams and the understandings of where a business can go. Whereas for blokes, generally, and again, we've said many times over here when in these episodes, she says, he says, we're going to be speaking in stereotypes because that's what we tend to see the most of within the
Mm.
industry. The blokes tend to leave school, they go into an apprenticeship, they start working for someone, they bump out as a sole trader, and then eventually they decide they want to employ some people and have a business. That's the typical pathway for the two types of people that we are talking about here. And so they don't have another experience of what business could be like. They're gunning towards a goal that they've seen someone else set, or they're gunning towards an ideal of something they might like. However, they tend to get stuck in that cycle because they don't know any better. Not knowing better is okay. You're not
Mm.
taught. It's not your fault that you don't know. You're not taught this stuff. At some point, it becomes your responsibility to go and find the information so that you can make a change. What we typically see, though, is in a couple where the couple are working together, it's the lady that does the research and finds the information to make the change. And generally, in many cases, not all, many cases, they are behind the steering wheel for driving the business into a bigger and better place. And what we see here is a disconnect. Again, it's not typical and it's very often the tradie just wants to build the houses. He doesn't want to have the big business. He doesn't want to employ the people. Yep, he might want the money or the time or the things that go with having both of those. And so we get stuck in this paradigm of push and pull and push and pull. And we end up in a space where there's a whole bunch of disconnect, both within the business and unfortunately within the relationship. And so, what we really wanted to talk about today is how it's possible to have connection even though your goals or values may be disconnected. And I don't think this is something that many of us do. It starts with getting clear. How many times have we sat in front of a client and said, well, can you tell us what your goals are? And they don't know how to answer it. It'd have
Mm.
to be 80% of the time, wouldn't it?
Yep. It's just, I don't think it's discussed. I think that's one of the big issues. It's not
No.
talked about.
I think that's the first step here. When we sit down, when you and I sit down and have a discussion about our goals, we have individual goals and we have business goals. We don't live together. We don't have a relationship. We're great mates. We've got a working relationship, and that's our relationship. We don't
Mm.
have a romantic relationship. And yet we have two very different lives that we're able to bring together to create a business that supports both our goals. And I
Mm.
suggest that you can do that in any partnership, even when you're a husband and wife. But you have to have clarity about what you're both working towards.
Mm.
And sometimes it's not going to be the same. We have clients that we work with that don't have the same personal goals. And if you spend enough time working through on the goals and why those goals are important to you, there is always opportunity for commonality so that you're able to come together and work towards the commonality rather than the goal. Now, you may individually be working towards overseas travel, and your partner may individually be working towards the latest and greatest four-wheel drivey thingy doobie that I don't know a lot about, because that's what each of you individually want. But the commonality here is about how you spend your downtime. And
Mm.
when you're working towards having downtime, suddenly you've got a shared goal,
Mm.
even though you want to do different things with achieving that goal. And
Mm.
that's okay.
I think of it like going out to dinner at a restaurant. You both order a different meal. You both have different drinks because you have individual preferences. But the shared goal is you want to go out and have a nice dinner together
Mm.
without the kids, have some peace and quiet, be served by a waiter or waitress.
Hmm.
So there's a commonality to that, but within it, there's individual idea about what the components are of
Mm.
that. So exactly as you're talking about, Nick, I just like to turn everything into an analogy. So, as you say, uh, communication, talking is the start of that, and therein lies another problem: is the ladies are much better at articulating a lot of this stuff and how they want to feel and what's important to them than the guys who are like, I don't know, I was sick of working so hard,
Oh, yep.
and that's where it ends.
Yep.
And so, look, I think it often comes down to you used the word fault before, and I think that's a great distinction for people if you can just stick with me for a second and really lean into this concept. While it's not the tradie's fault that he went straight from school to his trade and then went and did an adult apprenticeship in another one because he didn't want to be a plumber, he wanted to be a carpenter, and so he's gone and got his building license and now he's doing that. But all he knows is being on the tools and working on site. It's not necessarily his fault, and it's certainly not the tradie wife's fault that that's been his life, and you each have an individual responsibility to do something differently if you're not happy with your current results. So if you're disconnected and you don't have a common goal and you're not seeing eye to eye on what's going to happen, and old mate's just like, I don't know, I just got all this work to get through. Like, I don't even have the brain space to talk about this stuff, honey. Like, can we just get on with it? Like, I've got to get all these invoices out tonight. Otherwise, people aren't going to pay the bills and we won't even have food on the table. How can we even think about a holiday? Sorry if I'm triggering anybody. Then, as the tradie wife, you have a responsibility to approach that differently if you're not satisfied with that result, rather than necessarily point the finger at said husband and say, well, you won't even talk to me about it. How am I supposed to get anywhere? It's like, well, maybe you need to find another way. Or you can just accept that that's your lot in life because he's going to keep blocking you and making, in inverted commas, you miserable. Likewise for the dude. And, I doubt there's many dudes that listen to this podcast. But for them to bitch and moan about the nagging wife and, she's always on my back about this stuff, it's like, mate, have you ever thought about actually doing something different
Mm.
and responding to that, taking responsibility?
I think there's a few ways that you can do something different here, and it starts with connection. And so,
Yeah.
if you haven't had a date night for a while, make a date night. Organize the family, the tribe, your mates, whoever to come and take care of the kids. Head on out to dinner. There are sneaky ways you can have date nights. If you've got kids and you've got nobody to help you out, you can, I don't know, lock them in a room with a movie and some lollies and whatever the hell it takes so that you can have an hour or two sitting down and sharing a drink or just a cuppa and a chat on an afternoon. There are lots of ways that you can create that space, but
Mm,
in that space and the opportunity for connection can come a bigger conversation about goals and then finding commonality. It's okay to push through a conversation and not take it personally.
mm,
It's okay for you to be on a different page because there will still be a commonality that you can bring together and work on. And so when your goal and your partner's goals don't match, keep going with the conversation until you can find the commonality. Why? Why is it your motivation to buy the big fancy four-wheel drive thingy? And why is it your motivation to go on an overseas holiday? What are you actually looking for there? Keep asking why, get curious, and you'll eventually come to that point. Well, I just value my free time, and in my free time I like to do this. Yes, now we've got the commonality and we can build a plan to find that goal that we're now both working towards. So while we've gone around it a few different ways and given you a few different opinions today, this is really all about finding a way to find commonality within your goals to avoid some of that disconnect that unfortunately is a bit insidious and creeps in without you really realizing it if you're not paying
mm,
attention.
mm.
The first action step for you today is if you haven't had a date night in a while, it's time to book date night. That can look like whatever works for you. If you need some tips on how to do date night, let us know. We're pretty good at date night. We help all our clients do date night pretty regularly. And there is an opportunity for you just to get together and begin to have some of those conversations. And you might not get your answers in the first conversation. It might take a while. We've got lots of couples, Warwick, that we work with, and they don't always have the answers to those questions straight up.
No, it can take some clunky, uncomfortable stuff at the start until you get better at how to have those conversations. They can feel a bit weird, but not having them is not going to get you better at them and not going to get you closer to that commonality. Um, I think with that, Nick, the ultimate thing with that little example is maybe it ends up being, well, I don't care if we don't buy a fancy four-wheel drive. What I really want to do is get away with you and the kids.
Mm.
And I love heading bush. And maybe that looks like, well, I don't have to go overseas. It's just I want to do something memorable. I want to do a bucket list thing. It's like, well, we've always talked about going to Western Australia. Why don't we hire a motorhome over there and spend a couple of weeks? Or it can turn into something that we just didn't expect. The solution often doesn't look the way we thought it would,
That's right.
but it can work even better for both parties in that case. And it all starts with that conversation, which, as you say, Nick, do the date night. Wifey and I have them regularly. We've got a 5-month-old in the house. So there is not a lot of free time around our lives at the moment. We're both running businesses. There's breastfeeding, there's food up the walls, there's sleepless nights, and we still prioritize our date nights. They might be, 34 minutes because young bloke wakes up halfway through our hour that we'd allocated. But we keep it tight. We talk about the things that we really want to. We start by expressing ourselves, and it keeps things rolling along, and it keeps us aligned and keeps us connected.
Mm. Maybe what we're really talking about today is connection.
100%.
Thanks for listening.